Mohan and Lila had lived a long life filled with work, hope, and sacrifice. They were not rich people, but they always believed their greatest wealth was their children. For many years, they worked hard in the village, saving every little amount so their children could study, grow, and build a better future. Mohan worked as a carpenter, while Lila took care of the home and helped neighbors when needed. Their small house was always full of voices, laughter, and simple happiness. As time passed, the children grew up. One by one, they left the village to find work in the city. At first, they visited often. They called, sent messages, and spoke with excitement about their new lives. Mohan and Lila felt proud. They believed all their sacrifices were worth it. But slowly, things changed. The calls became fewer. The visits stopped. Months passed, then years. Mohan and Lila waited, hoping every festival would bring familiar footsteps to their door. Lila cleaned the house carefully before each celebration, cooking favorite dishes that slowly went cold. Mohan sat near the window every evening, watching the road that led to the village. The road stayed empty. One day, a message arrived. Their children said they could no longer support them and suggested they move out of the village house. The words were polite but distant. Mohan read the message silently. Lila watched his face, already knowing something was wrong. He handed her the phone. She read it once, then again. Her hands trembled, but she did not cry. That night, they packed what little they had. 2 small bags held their clothes, a few photos, and memories of a lifetime. The house that once felt warm now felt hollow. At sunrise, their children came briefly, not to stay, but to leave. There were no hugs, no long talks. Just quick words and hurried movements. Mohan and Lila stood near the edge of the mountain road as the car drove away. Dust rose into the air, then settled. The sound of the engine faded. Silence wrapped around them. Lila held Mohan's arm tightly. He placed a gentle hand over hers. They did not speak. There was nothing left to say. With no home left in the village, Mohan remembered an old mountain cabin far away from busy roads. Long ago, he and Lila had stayed there for a short time when work took them near the hills. The cabin had been weak even then. Now, after many years, it was likely in worse condition. Still, it was the only place they could go. The journey was slow. The path was rough, and the bags felt heavier with every step. The mountain air was cold, but fresh. Tall trees surrounded them, and birds moved freely above. Lila looked around and felt a strange mix of fear and peace. Mohan focused on each step, careful not to slip. By the time they reached the cabin, the sun was low. The place looked forgotten. The roof had holes. The wooden door leaned to one side. Plants grew wild around the walls. The window was cracked, and the ground inside was covered with dust and dry leaves. Lila stood still, taking it all in. Mohan walked forward and gently pushed the door open. It made a slow sound as it moved. Inside, the air smelled old and damp. For a moment, Lila felt her heart grow heavy. This was not the life they had imagined. Mohan looked at her face. He saw worry, but also strength. He smiled softly. "We can make it better," he said calmly. Lila nodded. She placed their bags inside and began clearing a small space to sit. As night fell, the forest grew quiet. The wind moved through the trees, and stars filled the sky. They sat together on the cold floor, sharing a simple meal they had brought along. That night was hard. The cold entered through the broken roof. Strange sounds came from the forest. Lila stayed close to Mohan, holding his arm as she tried to sleep. Mohan stayed awake for a long time, listening, thinking, and planning. In his heart, he felt pain, but also determination. Life had turned away from them, but they were still standing. They still had each other. When morning came, sunlight entered through the roof and touched the dusty floor. Lila woke up and looked around. The place was still broken, but the light made it feel different. Not hopeless. Just waiting. She stood up, brushed off her clothes, and stepped outside. The mountain view opened wide before her. Green hills stretched far into the distance. A small stream flowed nearby, clear and calm. Birds sang freely, as if welcoming the day. Mohan joined her. He followed her gaze and smiled. "This place is quiet," Lila said softly. "Yes," Mohan replied. "And quiet can heal." They made a simple promise that morning. They would not wait for anyone anymore. They would build a life with their own hands. Slowly. Honestly. With patience. They did not know it yet, but that ruined mountain cabin was about to become something beautiful. And this quiet goodbye was not the end of their story. It was the beginning. Morning brought new challenges to Mohan and Lila. The mountain air was cold, and their bodies felt stiff after sleeping on the hard floor. Lila rubbed her hands together to feel warm. Mohan stepped outside the cabin and looked around carefully. The forest was quiet, but not empty. Life moved softly all around them. They knew they could not survive by only sitting and hoping. They had to act. Mohan walked around the cabin, checking the walls and roof. Some wooden parts were weak, but the base was strong. Stones held the structure firmly. He felt relief. This place could stand if treated with care. Lila began cleaning inside, sweeping away dirt and leaves. Each sweep felt like a small step toward dignity. By midday, they felt tired but proud. The cabin looked a little cleaner. Sunlight entered through the window, making the space feel warmer. Lila arranged their few items neatly. A photo was placed near the wall, not to remember sadness, but to remember strength. Food was their next concern. They had very little left from their journey. Mohan decided to explore the area. He carried a small knife and walked slowly, watching the ground and trees. Lila stayed back, fixing a small cooking space with stones. Mohan found a small stream nearby. The water was clear and cold. He drank carefully and smiled. Water would not be a problem. He also noticed wild plants growing nearby. He did not touch them yet. He knew it was risky. Instead, he searched for fallen wood and dry branches. When he returned, Lila was waiting with concern on her face. Her worry turned into relief when she saw the wood. "We will manage," Mohan said calmly. They cooked a simple meal that day. It was not enough, but it was something. Hunger stayed, but hope stayed stronger. Days passed slowly. Every morning, Mohan worked on the cabin. He used old tools he had carried for years, tools that once helped him build homes for others. Now they helped him build safety for himself. He fixed small holes, strengthened weak parts, and secured the door. Lila took charge of the inside. She cleaned, arranged, and learned how to use less. She washed clothes in the stream and dried them on rocks under the sun. She learned the rhythm of the mountain, when birds sang, when wind changed, and when silence meant rain. At night, they talked quietly. "Do you think they will come back?" Lila asked once. Mohan did not answer right away. He looked at the fire, watching flames move slowly. "If they do, we will welcome them," he said. "If they do not, we will still live." Lila nodded. She felt pain, but also peace. Waiting had hurt them before. Living now felt better. One afternoon, a storm came suddenly. Wind shook the trees, and rain poured heavily. Water leaked through the roof in a few places. Lila rushed to move their things. Mohan placed containers under the leaks and stayed alert. Thunder echoed across the mountains. For a moment, fear returned. But the cabin stood strong. When the storm passed, the ground smelled fresh, and the sky cleared. Mohan and Lila sat quietly, listening to the calm that followed. "We survived," Lila said softly. "Yes," Mohan replied. "And we learned." The next day, Mohan improved the roof using wood and leaves. It was not perfect, but it was better. Each improvement gave them confidence. They were not helpless. They were learning again, like children discovering the world. One morning, while Lila was near the stream, she noticed movement between the trees. Her heart raced. She stood still, breathing slowly. A deer stepped out, looked at her briefly, then ran away. Lila smiled. Fear turned into wonder. She returned to the cabin with new energy. The mountain was not against them. It simply asked respect. A week passed. Their bodies grew stronger. Hunger became manageable as Mohan learned to fish small amounts from the stream using simple tools. Lila learned which plants were safe by observing animals and remembering old village knowledge. They never took more than needed. One evening, as they sat outside watching the sunset, Mohan spoke with a gentle smile. "I feel useful again," he said. Lila looked at him. His face looked tired, but alive. She felt the same about herself. "We are building something," she replied. "Not walls. A life." That night, Lila slept deeply for the first time in years. Mohan watched the stars through the broken roof and felt calm. He did not feel abandoned anymore. He felt present. Far away, the world moved fast. People hurried, spoke loudly, and forgot easily. Here, time moved slowly. Every step mattered. Every breath counted. Mohan and Lila were no longer waiting for rescue. They were no longer looking back at what was lost. They were shaping what remained. The mountain cabin, once forgotten, now held quiet laughter, shared meals, and growing courage. And though the road ahead was still long and uncertain, they faced it together, one small step at a time. The mountain had slowly accepted Mohan and Lila as its own. Weeks passed, and their daily life followed a simple rhythm. They woke with the sun, worked through the day, and rested when the sky turned orange. The cabin no longer felt like a shelter of need. It felt like a home built with patience. One morning, Lila noticed smoke rising far across the hill. At first, she thought it was fog, but the movement was different. She called Mohan outside. He narrowed his eyes and watched carefully. "Someone is there," he said. Visitors were rare in the mountains. The thought made Lila uneasy. They had nothing to hide, but they also had very little to protect. Mohan stayed calm. He believed fear wasted energy. By afternoon, footsteps reached the narrow path near the cabin. A man appeared, carrying a bag and walking with effort. He looked tired, dusty, and unsure. When he saw the cabin, he stopped. His face showed relief. Mohan stepped forward slowly. Lila stood behind him, alert but quiet. The man raised his hand politely. "I did not know anyone lived here," he said. His voice was gentle. "We live here now," Mohan replied. The man introduced himself as Arun. He was a traveler who repaired mountain paths for nearby villages. A sudden storm had damaged the road, and he had lost his way. He asked if he could rest for a short time. Lila looked at Mohan. Mohan nodded. They offered Arun water and a simple meal. He ate slowly, grateful for every bite. As they sat together, Arun looked around the cabin. "You have done good work here," he said. "This place was broken before." Mohan smiled lightly. "We fixed it little by little." Arun stayed until evening. He spoke about the villages beyond the hills and the people who lived there. He talked about small markets, shared work, and simple joys. Lila listened with interest. It had been long since she heard stories of other lives. Before leaving, Arun turned serious. "If you ever need help, there is a village 2 hills away. They are kind people." Mohan thanked him. Lila felt warmth in her chest. That short visit reminded them they were not invisible. After Arun left, Lila felt thoughtful. "The world still exists beyond these trees," she said. "Yes," Mohan replied. "And we are still part of it." The next few days brought change. One afternoon, Lila hurt her foot while carrying water. It was not serious, but it slowed her movement. Mohan took over most tasks, insisting she rest. Lila felt frustrated. She had just begun to feel strong again. Mohan noticed her silence. That night, he spoke gently. Strength is not only work. It is knowing when to pause. Lila understood. She rested and allowed herself to heal. During those quiet days, she spent time observing the mountain. She noticed patterns in birds, clouds, and light. She learned when rain would come and when the wind would turn cold. While Lila rested, Mohan explored further. One day, he found signs of an old garden near the cabin. Stones formed lines, almost hidden by plants. Someone had once grown food there. Mohan felt excited. With effort, he cleared the area and began planting seeds they had saved. It was slow work, but hopeful work. As days turned into weeks, green shoots appeared. Lila's foot healed, and she joined him. They worked side by side, their hands in the soil. It reminded them of their younger days in the village. One evening, while watering the plants, Lila spoke softly. "Do you think our children think about us?" Mohan paused. He chose his words carefully. "Maybe sometimes. But we cannot live inside that question." Lila nodded. She had learned that longing could quietly steal joy. That night, a strange sound echoed near the cabin. It was not an animal. It sounded like coughing. Mohan stood up and listened. The sound came again. They stepped outside cautiously. Near a tree, they saw a young woman sitting on the ground. She looked weak and frightened. When she saw them, she tried to stand but failed. Lila rushed forward. "Sit. Do not move," she said gently. The woman's name was Rina. She had been traveling alone and fell sick on the path. She had no strength left to continue. Mohan and Lila helped her inside, gave her water, and covered her with a blanket. Rina slept deeply. For the next 2 days, Mohan and Lila cared for her. Lila cooked light food. Mohan stayed nearby in case help was needed. Rina slowly regained strength. She spoke little but smiled often. On the 3rd day, she sat up and said, "I thought no one would find me." Lila held her hand. "You were not alone." Rina shared her story. She was looking for work after losing her home. Life had been hard. Listening to her, Mohan and Lila realized their pain was not unique. The world held many silent struggles. When Rina was ready to leave, she thanked them with tears in her eyes. "You saved me," she said. Mohan shook his head. "We only did what anyone should." Rina walked toward the village Arun had mentioned. As she disappeared from view, Lila felt something shift inside her. Helping someone else made her feel whole. That night she said, "This place brought us pain, but also purpose." Mohan agreed. "We were hurt. But we are still capable." The cabin now carried more than survival. It carried kindness. The garden grew slowly. The walls held warmth. The mountain watched quietly as 2 forgotten people became something more. They were no longer just living for themselves. Without planning it, they had become a safe place for others. And that changed everything. The cabin had changed more than Mohan and Lila ever expected. What once felt like a forgotten corner of the mountain had slowly become a place of comfort and quiet strength. The garden behind the cabin grew a little each day. Green leaves spread across the soil, and small vegetables began to form. Lila checked them every morning with care, as if greeting old friends. Mohan spent his days improving the cabin and the land around it. He repaired the broken fence near the stream and cleared stones from the path. His hands were rough, but his heart felt light. He no longer woke with worry. Each day had a purpose. Word began to travel in soft ways. One afternoon, a young boy arrived, walking carefully along the path. He looked nervous, holding a small bag close to his chest. When he saw Mohan, he stopped. "My name is Aman," the boy said. "I was told there is a place here where people are kind." Mohan looked at him with surprise. Lila stepped outside and smiled warmly. They invited Aman to sit and rest. He explained that his family lived in a village across the hills. He had been sent to deliver tools to a worker but lost his way. Lila gave him food. Mohan showed him the correct path. Before leaving, Aman looked back and said, "I will tell others." Mohan and Lila exchanged glances. They did not seek attention, but they understood something had changed. More visitors came over time. Some were travelers. Some were workers passing through. Some were simply tired people who needed water and a moment of rest. Mohan and Lila welcomed them all with simple kindness. They never asked questions unless someone wished to speak. They never offered more than they had. Yet what they gave felt enough. One evening, a woman arrived carrying a basket. She introduced herself as Nita from the nearby village. She placed the basket down and smiled. "This is for you," she said. "You helped my niece when she was sick." Lila recognized the name. It was Reena. Lila felt her eyes fill with emotion. Nita had brought fresh grain, cloth, and dried food. Mohan tried to refuse, but Nita insisted. "You gave without asking," she said. "Please accept this." From that day, the exchange continued. Villagers began sharing small things with Mohan and Lila. In return, Mohan helped repair broken tools. Lila helped with cooking advice and caring words. A quiet bond formed. The cabin became known as a safe place on the mountain. Not famous. Not crowded. Just trusted. One night, after a long day, Lila sat beside Mohan and spoke softly. "Do you remember how lonely we felt when we first arrived?" Mohan nodded. "It feels like another life." Lila looked at the fire. "We were pushed away. But here, we were needed." Mohan placed his hand over hers. Sometimes loss opens a door we never planned to enter. As seasons changed, the mountain showed new colors. Leaves turned golden. The air grew cooler. Mohan gathered wood early, preparing for colder nights. Lila stored food carefully, learning how to preserve what they grew. During winter, the cabin stood firm against strong winds. Snow covered the ground, but inside, warmth stayed. Visitors became fewer, but messages arrived through those who passed. Small notes left near the door. Simple gifts wrapped in cloth. One afternoon, a letter arrived from the village. A group of people asked if Mohan could help build a small shelter near the road for travelers. They offered food and help in return. Mohan felt unsure. His body was not as strong as before. Lila saw his hesitation. "You do not have to prove anything," she said. Mohan thought for a long moment. Then he smiled. "I want to help. Not because they ask. Because I can." They went to the village together. It was the first time they had returned to a community since leaving their old life. People greeted them with respect. Children watched with curiosity. No one saw them as a burden. Mohan worked slowly, guiding younger hands. Lila helped organize meals and comfort the tired. The shelter rose over several days. It was simple but strong. When the work was done, the village held a small gathering. There was no loud celebration. Just shared food and honest smiles. Someone thanked Mohan and Lila for reminding them that kindness did not need wealth. That night, as they walked back to their cabin under a sky full of stars, Lila felt peaceful. "We were forgotten once," she said. "Now we are remembered." Mohan shook his head gently. "Not remembered. Connected." As they returned home, the cabin welcomed them like an old friend. The garden slept under frost. The walls held stories now. Not of pain, but of growth. Mohan and Lila sat quietly, listening to the mountain wind. They did not know what tomorrow would bring. But they knew one thing for sure. They were no longer survivors hiding from the world. They were part of something living, something shared. And the place that once took them in had begun to give back in ways they never imagined. The mountain woke slowly that morning. Soft light touched the trees, and a gentle breeze moved through the valley. Mohan stepped outside the cabin and breathed deeply. His body felt older, but his heart felt steady. Behind him, Lila prepared a simple morning meal. The sound of her movements felt familiar and comforting. This place had become their true home. Years had passed since they first arrived with fear and uncertainty. The broken cabin had changed, and so had they. The walls were stronger. The roof no longer leaked. The garden had grown wide and healthy. What once held only silence now held meaning. Lila joined Mohan outside and handed him a cup of warm drink. They sat together on a wooden bench he had built with his own hands. "Do you ever think about leaving?" Lila asked gently. Mohan looked across the hills before answering. "I think about how far we have come," he said. "And I know we are exactly where we should be." That day brought visitors again. Aman, the boy who once lost his way, returned, now taller and more confident. With him were 2 elders from the village. They came not with need, but with respect. They spoke of plans. The village wanted to create a walking path for travelers and farmers. They wanted the cabin to remain a resting place, a symbol of kindness. They asked Mohan and Lila for guidance, not orders. Lila felt emotion rise in her chest. This place was no longer forgotten. It had become part of many lives. "We are simple people," Mohan said honestly. "We can only share what we know." "That is enough," one elder replied. Work began slowly. Young people helped clear paths. Stones were placed carefully. Signs were carved by hand. Mohan taught them how to build strong with little. Lila showed them how to store food, how to listen, how to care. The mountain watched as people worked together without hurry. One afternoon, a familiar face appeared on the path. Lila noticed first. She stood still, her heart beating faster. Mohan followed her gaze. Their eldest son stood there. He looked older, tired, and unsure. He held his hands together tightly. For a long moment, no one spoke. Mohan stepped forward calmly. "You have come a long way," he said. Their son nodded. "I was told you lived here. I did not believe it at first." Lila felt many emotions, but she stayed steady. "Why have you come?" she asked softly. The son lowered his head. "I heard what you built here. I heard how people speak of you. I was ashamed." Silence filled the space between them. "We made mistakes," he continued. "I do not ask for forgiveness. I only wanted to see you." Mohan looked at him closely. He did not see anger. He saw someone lost. "You can sit," Mohan said. "You can eat." Lila brought food. They sat together under the open sky. They spoke of small things. Of weather. Of work. Of life. No blame. No heavy words. Before leaving, the son stood up. His eyes were wet. "I am glad you found peace," he said. "So are we," Lila replied. When he walked away, Lila felt a weight lift from her heart. Closure did not come from words. It came from calm. That evening, the village people returned home. The path work paused. The mountain grew quiet again. Mohan and Lila sat by the fire. "We did not chase them," Lila said. "We did not wait, either." Mohan nodded. "We chose ourselves." As seasons passed, the cabin became a place people visited not only to rest, but to learn. Children listened to Mohan's stories. Women shared laughter with Lila. Travelers left notes of thanks carved into small pieces of wood. Mohan's hands grew weaker with time. Lila's steps slowed. But neither felt fear. One morning, Mohan did not rise with the sun. Lila sat beside him, holding his hand. He smiled gently. "We built something good," he whispered. "Yes," Lila said. "Together." Mohan closed his eyes peacefully, surrounded by warmth and meaning. The mountain remained still, as if honoring him. The village came quietly. There was no loud sorrow. Only respect. They helped Lila, stayed near, and listened to her stories. Lila continued living in the cabin. She was never alone. Children visited. Travelers rested. The garden still grew. Years later, people spoke of the mountain cabin with gratitude. They said it was built by two hearts who were once left behind but chose kindness over bitterness. And so the story lived on. Not as a tale of loss, but as proof that a home is not given by others. It is created by love, patience, and the courage to begin again.